October 2018, which is probably the most recent analytics case out there for movies. But even so, we're almost a year and a half since the case is out. Lots of movies out there in Hollywood, but what you see happening, and I'm sure this is the case because of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu, and now they even have something called Quibi, Quick Bites, which has 10-minute movies and things like that, is the movies that get out in Hollywood are of a certain kind. They're the larger than life movies, right? That have wide releases. Generally, they tend to be action hero based movies, or they tend to be franchises, right? So you can see very clearly here. There are very few, like La La Land was an exception. We actually went to the theater to see it because we really wanted the movie experience. But if you look at this year, this has basically become a medium now. The theater I'm talking about, not movies. The theater has become a medium for people to basically go and watch huge, big budget movies, right? Now, it always used to be the case that the summer and sometimes the Thanksgiving, Christmas period, if you look at the seasonality when you run the models, was the time for these big budget type movies. That this is a recent case, and if you use the same data, if you use the same case and studied the same response models and run the data in 2008 or 9, you might have seen very different elasticities. So just an FY solution, right? So what I wanted you to look at was the influence of all these variables after building a reasonable model that had a decent R square, right? And predicted validity. So the first thing I did is like I said, I created the number of competing movies using the VLOOKUP function.
We ended up doing a count if by month because I wanted to include movies that are in the immediate proximity, not just the same week, because sometimes they trail in. You might have a budget of going to a movie that's like only once per month. I have some friends that do that.
Have some structure around your model building. Okay, number one. At the same time, you cannot resist. You cannot ignore the world out there. That you can throw in 50,000 variables and regularize your way to 10 variables. Something that's only changing at the yearly level, and I'm putting year fixed effects. So what I did is I took out the year fixed effects in this model, the one on the right, and the model essentially becomes very stable in terms of EI. Okay, why? Because the year fixed effects are basically almost collinear with the Netflix revenue, because Netflix revenue is changing every year, right? But it's only varying at the yearly level. But as a modeler and as somebody who's trying to understand how Netflix affects the overall revenue, you want to keep that in the model and not the year fixed effects. So I took out the year fixed effects, but retained everything else. As we can see, seasonality does exist, so we retained that. We retained the competition, retained the quality, retain budget, retain theaters, and keep Netflix, and then remove that. And automatically the VIFs reduced, the instability inventory, R square didn't change much at all. Okay, so this is more or less the final model I went with. There's something called instrumental variable techniques, David, and you will go over this at some point, hopefully in the analytics program, which is, David's question is, how do you know that it causes more revenue, right? The only way you can know it in statistics or in analytics is if this variable is determined as a lottery. In other words, you give some schools more, you give some schools less, and run it like an experiment. Go into all of the details of the model, but the gist of it is you can use attribution models to predict box office success, link clicks on Facebook and Twitter, even use it to understand K through 12 policies, cancer screening, and fast food joints, right? It doesn't matter. In all of these places, attribution models help you better understand how to allocate resources, right? So, well, I just have to say that I have enjoyed, obviously, really enjoyed working with your group. Very special. You ask a lot of questions. You're highly engaged, and I also feel like giving back in some way. So I was suggesting to Karen and Shadi that maybe once in 2 or 3 months, subject to what Myra and Javier do, I'll just have an open office hours or something like that, just to catch up with you all. And if you feel like you want to discuss modeling issues or stuff that comes up at work that you want, whatever it is, I can do some aside. Right. Take it easy, folks. Enjoy working with you all as always.
The student that we output in the MS Analytics degree at Texas A&M will be someone that can take data from a variety of sources, put it together, clean it up, build a complicated predictive model, and then turn around and explain it in layman's terms to clients or board members. And this skill right now is hard to find in our job market.